Okay, before we start, this video is a whole summary of Iran's strategy and what Iran has been doing for 40 years. So see this video till the end and I can assure you that you will know everything there is to know about Iran's strategy. And also, I know there are issues of human rights and everything, but you will find a newfound respect for Iran's leadership strategies. Please subscribe to the channel right now. Enjoy the video. Missiles are raining down on Iran. Commanders are being assassinated. And air defense batteries destroyed. Military infrastructure burning. By every conventional matrix that the United States and Israel are using to measure this war, Iran is losing.
They no longer have radar. They don't have anti-aircraft equipment. They don't have anything. Their missiles are down 90%. Their drones are down 85%.
Or is it? Here's what I want you to imagine. Imagine a fighter stepping into the ring. He is big, he is loud, he throws punches like a sledgehammer, and his opponent is bleeding, stumbling, and taking hit after hit. The crowd thinks it's over, but here's the thing nobody in the crowd is asking. What is the bleeding fighter actually trying to accomplish? Because while the big guy is celebrating his punches, the bleeding fighter has already taken his wallet, already cracked his knee, and already turned every single person on the ringside against him. That is Iran right now. The question that matters when the fighting ends is not is Iran absorbing the punishment, it is Iran achieving its strategic objectives? And on that account, Iran is winning. This is not luck, this is not desperation. It is a result of 4 decades of preparation, calculated, methodical, relentless preparation. Imagine a nation that has been training for this exact moment for 40 years. Not a nation that just stumbled into the war. A nation that built for it. Like a black belt kung fu master who has spent a lifetime training for the one fight that matters. Who doesn't panic when he gets hit, because every time he got hit in training, he learned exactly how to turn it into an advantage. Today, we are going to break down how they did it in 5 great acts. It starts with one war that the world has largely forgotten. 1980, when Iraq invaded Iran. The conflict that lasted 8 brutal years. But here's what makes this war different from almost every other modern conflict you can ever name. Iran fought it alone. The United States backed Iraq. The Soviet Union backed Iraq. Most of the Arab world backed Iraq with the weapons, intelligence, money, and diplomatic cover. Iran, who at that time was fresh off its revolution, isolated under the embargo, fought all of them, and the commanders who survived that war walked away with a singular, snaring insight burnt into their souls. As long as Iran insists on sovereignty and independence, the most powerful nations on earth will always coordinate to destroy it. Not sometimes, always. Now here is something almost nobody talks about when they discuss Iran's leadership. The man who oversaw all of this strategic planning, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, was not the obvious choice to lead the Islamic Republic. When Ayatollah Khamenei died in 1989, Khamenei was not a figure of towering religious authority. His clerical credentials were actually modest when compared to many of his peers. But here's what did make him consequential. He had served Iranian president during the Iraq-Iran war. That experience, watching the world gang up on his country, managing the war from the inside, seeing its full human cost, gave him the political and strategic education that proved more important than clerical religious rank. The war didn't just shape Iran's military doctrine, it shaped the man who would spend the next 3 decades building the strategy we are watching unfold today. Now picture this. You are a young military commander. You just watched the entire world gang up on your country. You won barely, but tens of thousands of your brothers died, and you know in your bones that they will come for you again, what would you do? You don't build a bigger army because you can't outgun the United States. You don't build a bigger navy because you can't outsail Israel missiles. What you do is something far more dangerous. You build a doctrine born not from the strength but from necessity, from constraint, from being the underdog who has no choice but to be smarter. A side note, by the way, this is a reason why on-ground invasion of Iran won't be good for United States. Iran was cut off from conventional weapons under arms embargo. So instead of tanks, they deployed motivated, irregular fighters. Instead of expensive hardware, they developed improvised mine warfare. Tactics that don't need a supply chain. Tactics that don't need international approval. What began as an improvisation became a philosophy. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, became the institutional home for this philosophy. They went into the Lebanon. They built Hezbollah into a genuine military force. After the US invaded Iraq in 2003, Iranian-backed militia developed new techniques, sophisticated roadside bomb networks, intelligence-driven targeting, the use of partner militia that gave Iran complete deniability. During the Syrian civil war, they gained a new generation of commanders with advanced operational experience fighting a complex multi-front conflict. By the time current war began, Iran has spent 35 years learning how to fight, how to survive against a far more powerful adversary. And here is where it gets remarkably specific. The same decentralized logistic network Iran built over those decades to move fighters and supplies across the region, they have now been used to sustain the supply chain under the bombardment inside Iran itself. The same doctrine flexibility that made Iranian-backed forces effective against the US troops in Iraq, that ability to absorb, strike, disperse and reconstitute is precisely what allowed IRGC to keep functioning today, even as their senior commanders are being assassinated. This is not an improvisation under fire. This is a system built for exactly this scenario, like a Roman-era warrior who has trained since childhood, hardened, scarred and tactical, now facing an opponent who is powerful simply because he is large. Big doesn't always win, prepared does. Now let's talk about money. For decades, the United States has built a financial cage around Iran. Sanctions, asset freeze, cut off from the international banking, throttled oil revenue, excluded from the global trading system. Most countries would have collapsed by now, but Iran adapted. And here is a twist that nobody is talking about. When you expel a nation from the global capitalist system, you give that nation every reason to destroy it. Iran has literally no stake in preserving the architecture of the US-led economic order. Zero. It was logged out. So now, systematically and methodically, it is threatening the foundation of that order. Think for a second what Iran is actually doing economically in this war. It is targeting energy infrastructure. It is applying pressure to the Strait of Hormuz. And it is striking ports, banks, and technological firms across the Gulf. This can't be a random act of escalation. They are in fact a systematic campaign against the economic foundation of US-led regional order. An order that was built in no small part specifically to contain Iran. And Iran didn't forget that, and now it's threatening the architecture itself. One choke point, one narrow passage through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil flow, 1/3 of its fertilizers flow. Iran cannot fully close it, but it doesn't need to. The credible threat of disruption is enough to rattle the energy market, spike shipping insurance costs, and force the United States to deploy enormous military resources just to keep the trade lanes open. Resources that could otherwise be used offensively. Here's the dark brilliance of this. Since mid-1970s, Gulf state has priced their oil in US dollars in exchange for American military protection. This is a petrodollar system, the bedrock of American economic dominance. Iran, locked out of that system, is now holding that system hostage. Every month, energy markets stay volatile. The case for the dollar-dominated oil settlement weakens, and the conversations are already happening in Beijing, Moscow, and Riyadh about the alternatives. The cost to Tehran of threatening the Strait practically very low, but the cost to Washington of defending it enormous. And that asymmetry is a whole point. Okay, business people, it is time to get serious. You are running a business and you are not generating a potential revenue or collecting leads, or your business is in crisis. Then there are two things that you need to do urgently. First, realize that slowing business becomes a norm if it is not addressed quickly. And second, you need to call in experts because the time at which you should have reached out was yesterday. And we expertise by helping businesses through crisis by our cut-throat digital marketing skills and advanced AI. But here's the thing, we are dead serious people and we are passionate, possessed with our work. So you understand, we don't have the patience for the BS. So if you're serious about actually doing business, then only you should reach out to us by the button below. However, the most dangerous element of Iran's strategy, the one with the most lasting consequences, is not military, it's not the economics, but it's the political. Since 1979, the United States has built a security of network across the Gulf. Military bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. The bargain was explicit. Gulf states aligned with Washington on the matters of regional security, including eventually tolerating or even normalizing the US-Israel security relationship. And in exchange, they received American security guarantee, the chance to prosper with the US-led order. Iran looked at that arrangement and saw it for what it really was. Not a collective defense alliance, an offense alliance, one that could be turned against Iran at any moment. An alliance designed in no small part to contain the Iran. But Tehran also understood something else, something that would become the key to its entire wedge strategy. The system's vulnerability was not American military power, it was Gulf buy-in. The buy-in that was entirely contingent on one thing: the United States actually delivering on its security promise. The moment Washington failed to deliver, the moment the Gulf states saw a gap between what America promised and what America did, the entire architecture started to crack. So Iran's long-term goal was never to defeat the US military. It was always to make America's Gulf partners doubt America. That project had limited success for years. Then 2019 happened. Iran struck Saudi oil facilities and the United States did nothing to defend the Saudi Arabia. Then 2025, Israel launched a strike on Hamas negotiators in Doha, Qatar. The United States again did nothing. Then the current war also, US and Israel air defense system have been deployed primarily to protect Israel, while the Gulf state infrastructure has been burnt without equivalent protection. The message received by Abu Dhabi, Doha, and other surrounding countries: when Washington has to choose between Israel security and the Gulf security, it will choose Israel security every single time. And here's the thing about the Gulf state right now. They are not pro-Iranians. They are actually frightened of Iran, angry at Iran for targeting their assets. But they are, for the very first time in generation, seriously questioning whether their alignment with Washington is worth the cost. The doubt, that seed of uncertainty, is precisely what Tehran has been working towards. A Gulf that no longer fully trusts Washington is a Gulf less willing to host American bases, share intelligence, finance US military operations. Iran's long-term security doesn't depend on defeating America. It in fact depends on making the cost of America's presence in the Gulf too politically expansive for Arab hosts to sustain. America and Israel have a favorite tactic in this war. In fact, in any war. Kill the leaders. The theory is quite simple. Cut off the head, the body dies. Eliminate Iranian political leaders, assassinate IRGC commanders, degrade Iranian capabilities from the top down. Supreme Leader Khamenei himself was killed in the initial airstrike on February 28. By every conventional theory of conflict, that should have been devastating, and yet Iran is still fighting. Here is why. Tehran expected this. In fact, they were betting on it. They watched what the US and Israel did to Saddam leadership. They watched the systematic assassination of Hezbollah commanders in Lebanon. They saw what happened when Qasem Soleimani was killed in 2020. So, over the 4 decades, the regime deliberately decentralized its military command, distributed political authority across the regional nodes that can operate autonomously, cultivated multiple parallel leadership tracks so that no single killing could collapse the structure. It is this difference between a tree and a network. Cut the trunk of a tree and it dies, but cut a node in a network, the network reroutes. But here is a part that should keep American strategists awake at night. The commanders replacing the ones who were killed. They are younger. They fought Americans in Iraq. They fought Israelis in Lebanon alongside Hezbollah. They believe with considerable justification that they helped defeat the most powerful militaries on earth in those theaters. They do not share the caution of the older generation, the generation that remembered the catastrophic human cost of Iran-Iraq war. And they faced one pressure that new leaders everywhere faces, the need to prove themselves. The predictable result? Rather than being deterred, Iran military will become more aggressive. Decapitation may have accelerated the very escalation it was meant to prevent. Iran's strategic doctrine has a phrase at its center: survive and exhaust. Not defeat the United States, not destroy Israel, outlast them, show them and the world the cost of confronting Iran is militarily, economically and politically unsustainable. Survive long enough that the will to continue collapse. And it is working. Iran is absorbing strikes and continuing to function. Its military command has decentralized. Its economic campaign is threatening the Gulf order that Washington spent decades building. The wedge between the United States and the Gulf partner is widening. If these trends continue, the war could end with the Islamic Republic battered but intact, while the US Gulf alliances fractures and America's ability to project power in the region is limited for years to come. Iran could emerge weakened in its conventional capabilities, but stronger in the one thing that has always mattered most to the Tehran: the demonstrated ability to defend its sovereignty against the most powerful militaries in the world. The United States and Israel, with their overwhelming firepower, may be winning the battle. However, Iran, with 35 years of preparation and strategy calibrated to outlast rather than outgun, will be winning in the end. Perhaps the war. If this video has made you think differently about how wars are actually won and lost, not just on the battlefield, but in economics, in alliances, in patience of a nation that has been planning this for 4 decades, please subscribe, because we are going to keep going deep on the stories that headlines often miss. And drop a comment below. Do you think Iran's strategy ultimately holds, or does the firepower win in the end? See you soon.